Hi everyone, this is a brief session to explain to you about the college fees policies and procedures and the finance and support policies around students for 2020-21 academic year. I'm going to be taking you through the fees policies, and Diane is going to be taking you through the student finance policies. Just to give you a bit of background to start with, following an ELT review, it was decided that a full overhaul of the college's fees policies and student finance and support policies needed to be undertaken ahead of 2020-21. So in conjunction with ELT, I reviewed the college fees policies and Diane reviewed the student finance policies, and they were completely overhauled, and we have new versions for the college in place now that have been approved by governors. Okay. So I'll take you through the fees policy first, briefly. So it's a document that is designed to direct students and staff in terms of college policy around fees. The aim of the policy is to set out and communicate the regulations and fees that we're charging for courses and services at the college this year. Okay, so the introduction section sets out who is responsible for what in terms of fees and also what is covered in the policy. Okay, so we then move on to the course provision section 3. Okay, so this sets out the different types of course provision at the college and how fees apply and will be charged to each type of provision. For example, FE, HE, TU provision, etc. Okay. It also includes in section 3.6 a section around full cost provision. This guidance ties in with the full cost recovery tool and the guidance that will be coming with it that will be issued from myself and Maria in the next couple of weeks. We're just waiting for sign off on this, and this will come out as well. Section 3.7 and 3.8 is around guidance around instalment payment and refunds that need to be issued to students in certain circumstances. Section 4, this is around college services, separate to fees. Separate to curriculum, sorry. So this details fees around residential fees. There's a section in there for childcare, and this was actually signed off by the board before the decision around the children's centre was made. So that will be revised for next year's policy. And there'll be a note in there around external childcare potentially. Section 5, final section there, details what you need to do in terms of non-curriculum based external bookings. And the details of the fees around this, you can see that in conjunction with the fees procedure document I'll be moving on to in a second. Okay. So this policy will be reviewed annually by myself and ELT and is then signed off by the governors. A couple of appendices with this policy. So appendix 1 is around fee waivers. So students that effectively don't have to pay fees, this is where you need to look and they need to look to see where they stand around eligibility criteria for fees. And following that, we have a £1+ policy in Appendix 2. This is a requirement of ESFA guidance, and it's basically how we justify and demonstrate our additional fee income and what we're doing with it in terms of change and going back into the college and that kind of stuff. Okay, and generating evidence around that. So that's the fees policy document. I'll now move on to the fees procedure document that ties in with this and gives you more detail about each area and the actual pricing. Okie dokie. So just a quick run through this. So section 1, purpose and objectives. That sets out obviously the reason for doing this and what this document is in place for. It's basically to set out the pricing structure for this academic year, and it will be reviewed on an annual basis. Section 2 is all the information that we require around tuition fees, and it gives you, again, it gives you the criteria around eligibility for fee waivers. I thought we'd include that in there again, just to make it crystal clear. When you're looking at the fees alongside, then you can see who needs to pay them and who doesn't. Okay, so we just have there where my cursor is there, you can see all the different tuition fees. So I'll draw your attention there to the top one, which is the standard 13-hour non-accredited short course, except for foundation courses, which are free still. We're now going to be charging £50 for them instead of 45. So that represents the 50% of the funding. We previously charged 45, but it really should have been 50. So that's where that stands now. And it gives you the details. So obviously the non-accredited foundation courses are still free. GCSE, maths and English are free unless the eligibility comes into it, where the student already possesses a grade higher than 4 or C, and then they would have to pay. So any level 1 courses there, level 2, and then we move down into level 3 here, and the longer courses. So that gives you the details of the pricing around them. And following that, there's all the prices from Huddersfield University around all of our HE provision. And I've attached a link there where you can also go onto that and refer onto their website, and students can look on there. Because these are all, whilst we're allowed to set our own fees for HE provision, what we basically do is follow Huddersfield, because, you know, if we went higher than what the universities charge, we probably wouldn't get any students studying those courses here. Okay, so section 3 is a short section around exam fees. These may come into usage if students have to reset an exam, or they don't attend an exam, or they fail to show satisfactory progress or attendance during the teaching. So just a couple of examples there at the moment for GCSE English and Maths, and that's the standard fee that the colleges charge for those exams. Just put a note there, you know, if and when other exam fees come up in these circumstances, then you can talk to Steve Howarth or myself, and we will work something else out as well. Section 4 of this procedure is around all the residential rates for students. So accommodation, if the student is non-funded as per this list, basically. So I'll draw your attention again to the top line there, the top section, and the 13-hour non-accredited short course. So we're actually now going to charge the students that have to pay for their short courses £25 per course, which includes the 2 meals. So that will go in conjunction with the tuition fees to make it £75 for the course for a fee-paying student instead of the previous £45. Okay, so the rest of the section that then just details how much per night these students would have to pay for their room-only accommodation, as that's the basis that these students tend to come in on, until we get to the level 3 access to HE diploma residential fees, which are detailed there and shows you what they include. And there's the fee for the residential element for the non-residential students, which is basically around some course materials. Those students will now pay at the servery if they require meals. So that will just be done ad hoc whenever they want to get a lunch, or if they're staying later to work in the library and they want an evening meal, they'll just pay in the servery. There'll be nothing loaded onto a badge or anything for them. They'll just literally pay as required. Rates are there also for the TU standard 30-hour residential course, and the non-residential rate for TU as well, and a full cost residential rate if it's payable per student. Okay. We also charge for no-shows for TU, and those rates are there as well. If a HE student decides that they need to stay over, which does happen quite frequently, then they'd be subject to the £12.50 per night for room-only accommodation as well. And then there's just a few notes there to explain a bit more about meals and non-attendance. Okay. Section 5 there is around full cost and commercial bookings, and again this will work in conjunction with a full cost recovery tool and guidance that'll be issued by myself and Maria in the next couple of weeks. And basically if you have a group or a company that wants to make a bespoke booking, then you would need to speak to Sarah Taylor as business and marketing manager, and she will discuss any kind of bespoke packages for them with you, and that would be agreed and signed off before the booking was agreed. Okay, that's the end of that document. So I'll just on Cashless Campus quickly. Okay, so another development that we're currently making is a move towards having a cashless campus or cashless college. This has been sort of brought to light due to the developments around COVID. We wanted to do it anyway, but it's kind of sped it up a bit. And we've issued this guidance to students in the student handbook. And it's been taken on board by Thomas Franks, and they're fully on board with it as well. And basically, wherever is possible, we're going to operate cashlessly using the point of sale card machines that we've got in place. and it's being done in order to maximise hygiene and minimise risks to health. So this is like the details that will be going in the handbook. We'll also be putting up some signage and notices around this for students and for the staff. Look something like this, something like that. And obviously everyone can pay up to £45 contactlessly at the moment, and chip and pin can also be used if it's over and above that. And we'll obviously do things like wipe down the terminals and all that kind of stuff. There will be contingency in place for students that may not have a bank account, as an example of that. You know, that's kind of the only thing these days where you would still need to pay cash if you didn't have a bank account, and that's the only way you could have money. But other than that, it should be possible. So we're moving towards that as well. I'm just going to hand over to Diane now to do her section on student finance and support. And I'll just open the document quickly first. Okay, just handing over to Diane now.
Okay, hi everybody. So I'm going to just very quickly run through the student financial support procedures that we've implemented this year. As Neil's informed you, we've altered the financial support procedures in line with the Education and Skill Funding Agency funding guidance rules for 2021. And this has meant that we've altered the procedures to align themselves to this funding rule guidance, which we've had to follow. So basically, the AEB budget is set out into three categories, which is the hardship category, the residential access, and the 20+ childcare funding. We also receive funding for students who are on advanced learner loans, which is the ALLB fund. I'm going to talk about both of those funds because they run pretty much in parallel with each other, other than a few minor differences within the adult learner loan budget. I think what I'll do is I'll start by telling you the difference in terms of the adult learner loans budget to start with, so that helps just give some differentiation between the two loans. Essentially, the ALLB budget, a student will need to be enrolled on an advanced learner loan funded course. The criteria for the ALLB fund is exactly the same. It needs to be a single person living independently with a personal income of less than £17,004. And this is based on what the ESFA guidance has said in relation to low wage and gross salary. Or that they live in a household income where the overall income doesn't exceed the threshold of 29,600, and that's in line with the Office for Statistics on Disposable Income. That's exactly the same for the AEB funding, but for the advanced learner loan, what we are also able to draw down in relation to that funding under the same funding element is learner support, which we wouldn't be drawing down under the same funding stream for the AEB. As I'm speaking, it feels particularly complex to be able to talk about both of the funds and to try and explain what the funds are all about and where the funding guidance sits and where the procedures are going to sit. So in front of you, you'll see what we used to have in terms of where my cursor is now, 2019 to 2020, to what we're going to be doing now in 2020 to 2021. So I think rather than go through the procedures line by line, which are quite lengthy. It would be more useful, I think, for me to go through what we used to do and what we are now expected to do under the new funding guidance. As I said, there are a slight difference in the different funding streams, but I think the key thing to remember is that it's not staff within colleges' responsibility to know the funding guidance inside out and back to front. That's my responsibility, Neil's responsibility, and Beth's responsibility. We know what the funding guidance tells us. So if you have a brief and broad overview of what students are entitled to, it just gives you a little bit of a backstory to what they're allowed to claim for, but you don't have to know this in detail. So please don't feel any pressure to have the guidance put to memory. So in terms of the procedure, the process is exactly the same as it always has been. Students will apply for funding, they will probably meet with Beth, or they can just fill the application in themselves and submit it to Beth. The applications will need to be submitted alongside evidence in line with what I've just said in terms of their household income, or dependent on which course they're on. So the courses are really important. If they're a full-time or substantial funded course of 5 hours or above, they can, and it's an SFA funded course, they can apply for the AEB funding, and if it's on an approved advanced learner loan, they can apply for the ALLB funding. If they're on a short course, they can also apply for short course funding, which is as I will go through, I'll show you, it's much more limited, but there is a pot of money available for those students too. Once they've submitted their evidence, it will go for approval, which is done by myself and Neil. We will go through each application form and approve or not approve on the basis of the eligibility of income and whether they are on the correct course. And then students will receive funding accordingly. Once the students' funding has been received, it will be administered through their own bank accounts. Students will have to have their own bank accounts in order to receive this funding. The guidance states that unless there's a very specific reason why they can't have their own bank account, it will be given through their personal bank account. Examples of a non-bank account may be where somebody is being looked after because of their mental capacity and they're not able to have their own bank accounts. But ordinarily, it will need to go through their own bank account. Funding is attendance based, so students will be expected to attend, and we've got a minimum attendance criteria expectation of 100%. So payments will not be made unless students attend and they are attending for 100%. This is with the exception of childcare payments, which I'll go on to in a moment, because obviously if a child is poorly, then a parent may not be able to attend, depending on how or what that child, why the child is ill. It may be that they've been told that they can't attend their childcare provision for 48 hours, which would mean that the student may not be able to attend the college. So we would look at all attendance on an individual basis. So going back to the what we used to do and what we're going to do now. So back to the document that's in front of you. The AEB funding we would separate into, as I said, three areas of payment, which is hardship payments, residential access, and childcare funding. So hardship payments are things such as resources, emergencies, examination fees, UCAS costs, etc. Residential access is the money that we allocate to students to pay for their accommodation at college and to pay for meals. and then 20 plus childcare funding is to pay for childcare costs and associated costs. It would be worth noting that we only pay for childcare for students who are 20 plus. Any student who is under 20, so 19 or under, will be expected to apply for funding through a separate funding stream, which Beth will explain when students come to apply. So, in previous years, travel expenses under AEB funding, we for full-time students who are residential, we previously would pay up to £80 for one return journey. We are currently not giving any expenses out unless agreed by ELT in the first instance. In terms of hardship costs for full-time residential students, previously we would have given £120, and we're still completing this same amount of £120. And this funding will cover things like university trips and any expenses associated with university trips. In terms of domestic emergencies for residential students, we used to pay up to £750. There is nothing in the guidance that allows us to pay for residential students for domestic emergencies, because obviously they live with us. So we've had to remove that, and there are no expenses to be claimed under that criteria. For emergency funds, previously we did not allocate funds to this area. It was integrated within the domestic emergencies, so there wasn't an emergency fund because it was all integrated within the domestic emergencies. We've separated that out, and we've given a £50 max funding for this. This would be if there was an emergency at home where somebody had to get home particularly quickly, and we perhaps might need to pay for taxis or something along those lines. We've got some money allocated for that. In terms of examination fees, this is now limited to one retake per year. There's no further study for the student. So it's been separated out in line with the guidance. UCAS cost. UCAS, we've got £20 for one choice and up to £25 for a maximum of 5 choices, and up to £60 per night for university accommodation, which sits alongside the students are going to visit universities in order to ascertain whether it's the university that they want to go to once they've completed their course with us. There's a maximum of one night, so they will be expected to travel down in the day that they are, or the day previous to the day that they are going to have their interview or their tour, and then come back the next day. In terms of allocation for accommodation costs, that goes directly into the college, which is previously what happened, and the allocation is the same. In terms of the meal allowances, again, the meal allowances are paid directly to the college. This isn't broken down separately, and we also will give students, which we didn't previously, laundry costs for 1 week, so that they can do their laundry on site. In terms of hardship bursaries, previously we gave a lump sum which was £696, and we allocated that in 9 monthly instalments. We're not, unfortunately, allowed to do that anymore, so there's no more living allowance bursary, because students will have their accommodation costs allocated to them, and they'll also have a full meal allowance. So the funding guidance now no longer allows us to pay a hardship bursary in terms of monthly living costs. In terms of children in the childcare centre, in our children's centre. Obviously, our children's centre is children accommodation is now off-site, and we will pay up to £45 per day. But this amount is capped at £26,000 per student. So it's per child per day, and it's capped at that amount per student. For full-time students who are non-residential, so that's full-time students over 23 weeks, previously they would have got a lump sum of £1,500, and students would have to put the first £80 worth of travel. We've removed that first £80 worth of travel because we took the view that if they required support with travel expenses, then it may be difficult to find that first £80. So we've allocated the full £1,500, and obviously once that's gone over that, then they would have to fund their own. But if they could keep it under £1,500, then that obviously that would be paid for. And we've got the same for mileage if students come in within their own personal transport. Hardship, which is cost-related costs, was previously £120. That remains the same. Domestic emergencies remains the same. Again, as I said in the previous, the residential students where it was separated out, we've separated the domestic emergencies and the emergency fund out, and there's £50 allocated this year. Examination fees, again, the same as the residential students, and again the UCAS costs. Obviously, because students are non-residential, there will be no residential payment. Unlike students who are residential, the non-residential students will receive a hardship amount of money. Previously, they were paid £2,778, and that was paid over 9 months, alongside a parental learning allowance and alongside an adult dependent allowance. The funding, unfortunately, no longer allows us to do this, and we just have one hardship bursary payment, which is £600 per academic year. And we will not be taking a direct allowance out for lunches. If students would like to buy their own lunch whilst they're in college, they are of course allowed to do that, but they must take that money out of the £600. This is for those sorts of costs in relation to studying at college, but also being at home at the same time, so they can use that money to pay for their lunches. And again, previously childcare was unlimited, and now it's capped as in here to £45 per day. So part-time students up to and under 23 weeks. Previously, we said there was £150 max with the first £80 paid. That's not the case anymore. We've increased that to £250 per academic year, and students won't be expected to pay the first £80. They can claim for up to 5 courses per year, short courses per year, and they can claim up to £250 for travel expenses associated with those 5 courses per year. Each course will be capped at £50. In terms of hardship costs relating to cost-related costs, it remains the same at £120. Domestic emergencies, there was a limited fund previously, but unfortunately now there's no allowance, and emergency funds remains the same at no allowance. Examination fees previously was taken from cost-related payments, but now it will be limited to 1 retake per academic year, in line with the students who are on longer courses. In terms of meal allowances, the meal allowance previously was evening meal and breakfast in the college. The payment was made directly to the college, and the meal allowance will continue to be the evening dinner and breakfast, so no allowance for lunch. And similarly, there was no upper limit for childcare costs previously, but now there's a £45 per child per day allocation. This is in line with local childcare providers, which are on average probably below £45. So that's a reasonable allocation for South Yorkshire. In terms of the information on both the procedures, they're quite long procedures. They're both probably in excess of 10-11 pages long. It would be useful for staff just to have a brief read through, so they've got some understanding of assessment evidence and the application and assessment process. As I said before, it's not a requirement that students, that staff need to know. Students will be able to go and see Beth and have meetings with Beth to discuss financial support. All students who have been interviewed will be given the opportunity to speak with Beth should they require any financial support. Just as a slight digress, just in terms of childcare for both full and part-time students, as I said previously, they must be aged 20 plus on their first day of learning, and they must be a primary carer or have parental responsibility for the child or children that they're claiming for. The household financial threshold is in line with the AEB budget and also the ALLB budget. And students must be a home student, which basically means that they are a UK resident. And again, I won't go through the detail of that. If you want to just have a glance at the procedures, that will give you the full detail of those students from a home status. Students who are applying for childcare will be expected to produce evidence of the children's birth certificate, evidence of their tax credit notice award, and evidence of state benefit if required. Again, Beth will be able to explain this in much more detail to the student should they require it. All this information can be found on the website. If you are speaking to students, please direct them to the website or direct them to Beth. If you do require any information, or if you want further discussion about the different information that is in the documents, this is the overview here in front of you. But if you require any further information, please don't hesitate to get in touch with myself or Beth, and we can talk you through things. And I think that's pretty much it from me. It's not as complicated as it sounds. It's pretty easy to follow, and hopefully we'll be able to support students to come into college starting in a couple of weeks. So thank you for your time, for listening, and we'll pass you back to Neil, who will close the session.
Thanks, Diane. Okay, everybody. You will see this session on an email that will be circulating around. I'll also attach some documents with that email that goes with it. And if, as Diana said, if you need to ask us any further questions, don't hesitate to do so. And I hope that guidance helps when you're talking to students in advance of and during the year. So thank you very much, and see you soon.